Hello, welcome to Declan Hayes, who's joining me today for company. Welcome, Declan.
Hiya, welcome.
We're going to talk about the situation in Syria, the general security situation, and other political matters. Now, Declan Hayes is very is an authority on Syria. He's travelled there many times in a private capacity over the decade of civil war in that country, or NATO proxy war, perhaps more accurately. And Declan, he has witnessed a lot of the violations by the NATO proxies, who are now in power in that country. He's got a lot of contacts among the various minority groups, the religious groups in Syria, and is well placed to give us a deep insight into the situation in Syria. I should add that Declan Hayes was a senior professor of international finance and business. He's worked in many countries, including Japan, Australia, Mexico, as well as his native Ireland, where he is now. Declan, writes a regular column for Strategic Culture Foundation. I'm just going to call up his author page now. There's Declan's author page. His last article was actually today, February 13th, about Diego Garcia. He writes prolifically, almost a column every couple of days. So I invite you to check out that author archive, Declan Hayes, at Strategic Culture Foundation. Now, we'll just go back to our present matter, our conversation about Syria. Declan, again, welcome. Thanks for giving us your time.
Okay, that's no problem.
Declan, how would you describe the situation in Syria? There's almost now 6 weeks since the rebels, the militants, the terrorists, whatever you want to call them, have taken over governing that country. What's the situation like now, Declan?
Well, if we just go back to my photograph that Strategic Culture Foundation used, that photograph was taken in the town of Kassab in 2014, 10 years ago. It's an Armenian town on the border with Turkey. I was the first foreigner to get into it, and the photograph was taken with an Armenian woman who had been made a refugee 4 times before that, and I'm sure she's a refugee somewhere else now. What they did in the town of Kassab is something out of medieval hell, right?
Declan, who's
Pure
they? Declan, who are they that you refer
the
to?
people who are running Syria at the moment. It was a totally coordinated invasion by Turkish military intelligence, who coordinated the whole thing. Not everybody could get out. Some of the old people who had to stay were treated abominably. Some could work out a working relationship, cigarettes for alcohol and stuff like that. But they robbed everything, and the testimony I heard and collected, the involvement of the American ambassador in Turkey and much more, is the stuff war crimes should be concerned with. When I got into Maaloula on Easter Sunday 2014, again, I was the first foreigner in with the Syrian army, just a couple of hours after President Assad visited it. They had wrecked the whole place. They had destroyed every icon of Mary that they didn't rob, cutting the eyes out. There's there was a fish and chip shop there, just one, and the material had obviously been supplied by the Greek Orthodox Church or somebody like that. It was the cheapest utensils you could get, and whatever happened to the woman running that little fish and chip store, I wouldn't like to think about it. I saw the same thing up in Latakia with Armenians. Terrible things have been done to them. That is 10 years ago. And this is their philosophy. This is what they believe in, that, all.
Can I just stop you there, Declan? So this de facto ruler at the minute, the de facto president,
Yeah,
goes by the name of Ahmed al-Sharaa, otherwise
yeah,
known as Mohammed al-Julani.
that's
You're
right. Yeah,
saying you're saying that he's part of that network that you're describing, who violated, committed lots of horrors in Kassab, Latakia, Maaloula. You're saying the present
of
ruler and
course.
his
Yeah,
clique
yes.
are exactly the same people.
They're exactly the same people. The rank and file are interchangeable, right? Now, there are slight regional variations. For example, the Turkmen, which is an ethnic group in Latakia, joined ISIS en masse, whereas in Iraq they seem to be okay. So you do get these regional variations, but the important order of battle thing to understand is they're divided into essentially two groups. As I saw in Maaloula, you have the educated, urbane people. There's a lot of them in England in senior medical and other professional areas. And then you have the rank and file savages, of which there are plenty who just are there. Now, when I was in Maaloula on Easter Sunday 2014, according to the Syrian priests I was with, some of the graffiti was in this most beautiful Arabic script that any scholar would be proud to write. And the other was this real vulgar stuff of we get closer to God by chopping off your head, right? So that's their raison d'etre. Hafiz al-Assad, uh, the
Father of
president
Bashar.
before his son, uh, he condemned the Muslim Brotherhood in the strongest possible language, and he said that they were barbarians using the cloak of Islam to hide their crimes. And I think he's fully right on that one. And the other thing to understand, as with Maaloula, is they have major international backing. The reason I mention Maaloula is because all the artifacts that were stolen from there, a lot of them ended up for sale in the West, right? Now, through Sotheby's and places like that. Now, they preach whatever they preach about the Assad regime, as they call it. But the reality of the Syrian Arab Republic was that some people did very well out of it. There's no denying that. But there was a plurality of a sort. It was a Soviet type system whereby the basics were looked after. And of course, corruption was a major problem. Even the corrupt people complained about that, right? But the West in particular, with Qatar, a Muslim Brotherhood stronghold, with Turkey and the others, sent like every devil in hell against them. There was never 1 square millimeter of rebel space where a member of a minority religion could live peaceably. Not 1 square millimeter. I asked Ismailis, Christians, and so on about that. When I brought the head of the Syriac Orthodox Church to Ireland, a day after he met Prince Charles, who's now King Charles, he was insulted in the Irish Parliament, threatened by people who've been given Irish citizenship, and he had previously survived a bomb attack a couple of weeks earlier. One of his top archbishops had been murdered not so long before that, along with a Greek Orthodox bishop. If we were to divide the minorities into 3 parts, like ancient Gaul, the Druze, the way the Druze work is they want to do their own thing, so they'll generally side with whoever is the stronger. So there's a lot of them in Israel, in the Israeli Defense Forces, right? They just want to live their thing, and they don't look beyond that. But Lebanon is different, and in Syria, they have been strong supporters of the Syrian Assad government because they figured that was what was best for the Druze. Also, many leading generals came from the Druze community. Now, with the Christians, it has to be said, a lot of them just got out of Dodge, right? Because if you got caught with a religious icon, as some of them did, your death is not going to be pleasant. The Alawites, who again just wanted to generally lead their own lives, there's a lot of very poor Alawites in Syria. They just wanted to get by. I found them fairly liberal, fairly okay, fairly open-minded. Of course, there's Alawites you don't want to mess with, just like there's Christians you don't want to mess with over there, and several others. But they are against all Alawites in particular, right? So they're raiding Alawite villages. Alawites live here, generally Shiites live there, Sunnis live there, and they go in, and really you've got to go back to the Nazi era in Eastern Europe to find comparisons.
Let me just come in here a minute. So you're saying the rulers, the barbarians that you described, that Hafez al-Assad described earlier on, who are now in power, you're saying they're targeting the Alawite minority viciously more than the other minorities, the Christians, the Shia, and non-believers, or whatever.
They've got some bee in their bonnet about the Alawites. Okay, now after Saladin, we have to go back. After Saladin smashed the Crusaders, he went to Aleppo and massacred the Alawites for whatever the Alawites did. I don't know. Now, if you go to the Umayyad shrine in Damascus, which is the big shrine, Saladin is buried there, and right beside Saladin is Dr. al-Bouti, who was a leading Sunni scholar of Islam, a real Sunni scholar of Islam, not the kind of charlatans who wash up in Ireland and England. And they blew him, his grandson, and 80 of his followers up. They were just discussing the Quran. This is in the early days. They murdered Dr. al-Bouti's son there just a couple of weeks ago, a Sunni, right? Other fellas, they put their heads on parapets. This is the new force of law and order. They go into Alawite villages, outnumber the men 5-1. They're heavily armed, right? And they stop buses, drag the people off the bus, make them crawl like dogs, bark like dogs, take a few of them away, shoot them, or worse.
Declan, sorry again to stop you, but is this happening currently?
Now, today. It happened today. It happened yesterday. It happens every single day. Syria is a huge country, right? And you've all these villages up the mountains and in the middle of nowhere, right? So if you like, a lot of the peasant, I'll use that word, peasant Alawites manned the Syrian army. They weren't brain surgeons or anything like that. They're being dragged off buses, dragged off their homes. Their homes are being raided and looted, right? Who's going to stop them? You say, oh, he worked with Assad, he was this, he was that, so I'm entitled to rob him. And that was the same in the early days of this so-called rebellion, and it's the same today. And the West, Ireland, Britain, the rest of them fully support it.
Right. So they're whitewashing the reign of
terror. Just ignoring it.
Yeah.
When the Syrian authorities fell, all of these vultures, influencers, Mickey Mouse politicians, probably like that German woman,
Baerbock,
whatever her name is, descended on it and said, oh, it's great, liberty is here and victory in Europe Day and all the rest of it, as people were being slaughtered. And as interestingly, Syrian scientists were being assassinated. Now, whoever was behind that is an interesting one. You know?
Declan, I mean, the Western media here are playing a very well, sinister and disgusting role. I mean, CNN gave this present de facto president or leader, Mohammed al-Julani, who is also known as Ahmad al-Sharaa. He's the head of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the successors of al-Nusra Front, which go back to Al-Qaeda. Now, CNN lionized this guy in the early days when he took over power in Damascus in December. They gave him a very high profile interview with some lady journalist to try and spruce up his image as a new leader. During the week, there was an interview in the Western media where this de facto leader said that, yes, I was connected with Al Qaeda in the past, but I never participated in the atrocities that Al Qaeda are associated with. What you're saying is that that's a load of bunkum. He is and his regime are fully consistent with the horrors of the past and are perpetrating them as we speak.
Well, I didn't inhale, as Bill Clinton says. He was the number two in ISIS, right? Now, where did ISIS get those fleets of trucks from, right? So there was massive money behind it, and telling a few black lies or white lies or whatever gets them through. Why? Because the media, including the Irish media, don't leave the Irish out of it, or the British, or the rest of these snivellers in Europe. They're all in it together. I have things here, as I was telling you. I pointed out Irish passport holders. There's the thing there from 2017. I point out, I name them who bombed the Moscow State Theater, right? Who kidnapped, who blew up all those little Shia children in Fua and Kafraya 6 months before that newspaper article was written, and the Irish authorities had no interest. They acknowledged.
You're saying that the perpetrators, the suspects in those atrocities, are what, have Irish passports?
Yes.
They were what?
Yes.
What's the word? They were given citizenship. They immigrated
that's
from.
Right. Yeah, and loads more like them. And when another of these savages with an Irish passport was killed, the Irish media wrote about how good looking he was. You know, he was a fine looking bit of stuff. Now, they never wrote that about any IRA or Protestant person in the north of Ireland, about how good looking they were. Another of them had a rap sheet, right? If you think of those women who did sex jihad, you know, from England, you know, the three schoolgirls, right? Mm-hmm. They were recruited by Canadian military intelligence, right? So they're into it up to their necks in every way, you know.
Declan, before we just move on, could you just give us that reference to that newspaper again? Please give us the title of the newspaper and the date so that anybody looking in here can check it out.
Well, if they're able to, the Irish Mail on Sunday, Syrian commander after he fought in Syria. So the gentleman in question is Iyad Shah. And 6 months before that, the government was warned of Iyad Shah's links to Ireland 2 months ago when Dr. Declan Hayes, same moi, wrote to Foreign Affairs Minister Simon Coveney. Right? Now, you see, I've people in the mosques here, and, you know, I hear little bits here and there, if you understand. And my calculus is quite simple. It's not the calculus of the Irish government, the British government. You know, I just believe these people are total savages, right? So one has to oppose them as much as one can, right? Yeah. Now, I'm in touch with a lot of people in Syria, but mostly outside Syria at the moment. I was in touch yesterday with an Armenian friend of mine. I can't give you any names, but that Armenian, so I'm very pro-Armenian, right? My family name means I am Armenian, but I'm not Armenian, luckily for me. But I see in that person's case, many of that person's friends on Facebook have changed their profiles to the rebel flag, right? Now, so what that means is, let's just take your own personal case. Let's say you're a good little Armenian or Alawite, minding your own business, doing your job in Damascus. Well, now there's much fewer jobs, so somebody will shop you in as, you know, an Assad apologist, and off with your head. You understand? So they all have to be looking over their shoulder in that respect. The people I maintain contact with, they haven't earned one single solitary penny in several years. So living on their savings with the Syrian pound in the toilet. We see how the new government has sold out to Israel and all the rest, right?
Yeah.
Now, the situation at the moment is the Greek Orthodox Church is leading the soft power charge against these rulers of darkness. And they've been told what might happen to them if they're unlucky. So we have in Syria a group of largely Christians who have some form of protection, although MI5 are undermining that with their, you know, sending their Bible bashers over there, just like they did in Iraq with the Reverend Andrew White. Cyprus and Greece, and hopefully Austria and Hungary are coming out saying, hold on, you know, we can't accept what's going on in Syria. And then there's the Alawite Diaspora and so on are rallying around, but very slowly, because these people are not by profession revolutionaries or radicals. You know, they're just people trying to get on with their lives in Norway and Sweden and Finland and so on.
Yeah. Declan, do you see any prospect, any potential for a resistance? A movement that was loyal to the former president Bashar al-Assad. Do you see any potential resistance from units of the Syrian Arab army that fought against these al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, new rulers of Syria? Do you see any potential for a civil war, a counter-revolution or counter-offensive?
Well, if you're arguing that to change to the glass being half full, there are not enough of these rebel savages to control the whole country, right? The way forward, as I see it, is for this diaspora and people of goodwill everywhere that I think the angels said on Christmas Day to rally round outside Syria and support the forces of civilization in Syria. It's an extremely dangerous thing to do in Syria, as there is armed resistance.
Yeah. What role would Russia have in this future for Syria, do you think?
Well, again, Russia's out of the picture now. You know, Russia is a different issue, if you understand. I mean, it's like if you're a sailor, a seaman, or an admiral, they're not the same thing. You understand? So Russia, if you like, has bigger fish to fry and to be concerned with. So the objective for the moment has to be to get the Lebanese, if they can continue to stand, the Iranians, and people of goodwill, and there's many of them in the Gulf state, to try to put a little bit of backbone into this. But it's not easy. And I certainly don't want to be arguing or promulgating for people to go out to certain death, right? It's going to be a long process. But on the positive side, for Syria, it has to be patriotic people doing this, not to try to win brownie points with the former government or whatever. But it's Alawites and Druze and everybody else trying to defend and promote their own communities as best they can. There have been armed clashes. There was one today. There's a few people killed in Homs, I think. Um, Homs and Hama, the suppression is particularly vile, right? But if you're trying guerrilla warfare or anything like that, one has to be very careful because they'll come down on the villages, etc., supporting you like a ton of bricks. And of course, the new regime surrendered all their hardware to the Turks and the Israelis. So it's not going to be the type of battle it previously was.
Now, during the proxy war, in the heyday of the proxy war, Declan, when you were in Syria in 2014, that kind of period, Saudi Arabia, Qatar were big financial backers of these uh, Al Qaeda affiliates that mushroomed into the present ruler, Hayat al-Tirar al-Sham. Um, Now, do you see the Saudis and the Qataris bankrolling the regime and in that way making it more difficult to more well a strong giving it a stronger control of the power in Syria?
Well, the Saudis are playing their Machiavellian game, whatever it is. But the Qataris are hardcore Muslim Brotherhood, right? And they bankroll this thing all along with the Turks, right? The Turks are, if you like, their cannon fodder and their henchmen and hatchet men. You will recall that the ISIS guys could just walk over the border and stuff like that. There are complications with the Kurds. But to believe the Qataris have the best interest of any Syrians at heart is to believe in fairy tales. You know, they have a mega plan on with their pipelines and doing deals with Israel and so on and so forth. That's what they're looking at,
Because
right?
that was sorry to cut in on you, but that was an analysis early on that the Qataris wanted to run a pipeline from the Persian Gulf over Syria, out into the Mediterranean, up into Turkey. That was people
Yeah,
argued
well,
that that was the reason for the regime change war that NATO and its Arab client states launched on Syria to get rid of Assad, who didn't want to take on that project. Is that correct?
like again, you have to look at the wider picture. Was I think foolishly the Arabs allowed Saddam Hussein to fall. And the Iranians were delighted with that for obvious reasons. But although Iran became stronger, the area became weaker, in my opinion, right? Now, the Israeli Palestinian issue is at the heart of this, at the heart of the bigger area. And the fly in the ointment was Hezbollah, Iran, and their Syrian allies. So they have to go. That's just the way it is, right? Now, so what the Syrian government, Assad's government was very proactively pro-Palestinian, but the Muslim Brotherhood is running the show, a lot of the show in Gaza, especially now, and they're getting Palestinians, I think, to wantonly die. Right? I'm not pro-Israeli, but it's like the Warsaw Ghetto or Stalingrad. There, it's not a place to be, right? So the Qataris have one idea for the Middle East, right? They will do a deal with Israel when the time is right. The Assad thing was just to have this happy, people more Alawites, Druze, whatever, right? And have some kind of peace, right? But that does not fit into the picture of the bigger players and the would-be bigger players like Qatar. That's
Yeah. One last question, Dick, because we're running out of time here. One last question. Some people would accuse the Assad family, Bashar al-Assad and his family, of betraying Syria, deserting Syria in its hour of need, clearing off to Russia for asylum and a comfortable life. What do you say to people who peddle that
Well,
idea.
well, in my experience, but most of them are ignoramuses and have their own agenda to play to. Asma Assad is very sick.
That's the
Uh,
wife.
I think she's a wonderful woman, and I've said it in Strategic Cultural Review that Bashar Assad struck the jackpot with marrying that Sunni woman. She's very sick. She's had to put up with an awful lot. And the idiots would be saying, the Assad apologist is speaking. But when I was in Syria, I asked a lot of people, religious people, other people, cynics, etc., and they all praised Asma Assad. She's an uptown English lady who ended up in Stalingrad. And in my opinion, morally, she came out of it with head held very high. Bashar Assad was never in charge of the Syrian army, right? Okay, and in fact, one of the Alawites who jumped ship, Jafari, who's the ambassador to Moscow, was their UN permanent council or UN representative. So, and he's complaining about corruption, which is back to what I said, that even the corrupt complained about corruption. I mean, the Assads did what they had to do, and with the glass half full now, I think, and I know, other Alawites, other Syrians are stepping up to the plate in Syria and outside of Syria. And in the long term, that's good. But sadly, a lot of more innocent people are going to die at the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood.
You think so, Declan? Just let me clarify. I think what you're saying there. You think that there could be more violence, more civil strife, violence, civil war, or internecine violence in the weeks and months ahead, as people who are resistant or unaffiliated with the present regime, as that resistance grows. You think there could be a lot more violence in Syria?
There has to be. If you take Aleppo, Aleppo had a very strong Armenian, Christian, Alawite, etc. presence, but they were entrepreneurs. They had a big pharmaceutical industry. They made pharmaceuticals, exported it to Iraq and Somalia and wherever else, and I think nearer to Europe too. Right? They did things. They made things. Right, in a Soviet type system, the Syrians make things like fridges, cars, whatever. Right, that's all gone. All these rulers can do is rob and dress up in ill-fitting suits like that Jolani clown does and pretend at being diplomats and leaders. Right. They don't call the shots there. The Turks, the British, the Qataris, the Israelis, they're the guys who call the shots.
Right. Declan Hayes, Professor Declan Hayes, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks for your insights, Declan, on Syria. It's a grim outlook, but thanks for letting us know what the situation is.
Well, the glass is half full as well as being half empty. So we have to live in hope.
Okay, Declan, thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.